Hi everyone, Aaron here for zollotech, and this past week or past 2 weeks has been filled with all sorts of information about the upcoming iPhone 13, even the iPhone 14, new iPad mini, and much more. This is your news update for the week of July 25th, 2021. And the first thing is, Apple is apparently building a new factory in Arizona with TSMC, who produces the chips inside of iPhones currently. In order to more broadly diversify where they're making their chipsets around the world, apparently the Arizona factory will be in production in 2024. So they're going to be producing the 5nm chips at a cost of $12 billion in order to construct that factory. So apparently they're building that factory now, or going to start soon, and we should see production in a couple of years there. Now, the next thing that you should know is Apple has updated their support document on actually cleaning your phone to tell you not to use hydrogen peroxide. So that's something you don't want to use. You can use different disinfectants. I did a separate video on what they've said you can use, but do not use hydrogen peroxide, according to Apple, as that could damage the oleophobic coating on the display and cause that to kind of go away. So that's just one thing to note about cleaning your devices. So make sure you're not using hydrogen peroxide on it. Now, the next thing is the upcoming Apple September event will supposedly be virtual. Now, we thought this may or may not be the case. Originally, it was thought it would be in person, but every year they have an event around the time of September to show off the next iPhones. With the iPhone 13 event coming up around the corner, it looks like we're not going to have that in person again this year, and instead it will be virtual, since Apple is saying that their employees will start coming back to work in at least October or maybe a little bit later. So at this point, it looks like we're going to have another virtual event. I know a lot of people like this better anyway, because most of us can't go to it. So that seems to make sense. We'll see the next iPhone virtually, it seems. Now, Apple is attending NAB, the North American Broadcast Show, in person, apparently, in Las Vegas in October. Now, the last time they did this was in 2011, and that's when they showed off Final Cut Pro 10. So maybe we'll finally see Final Cut Pro for iPad. I would love to see that, where we have a new Final Cut Pro on the iPad, or maybe they have something completely new. So we'll see them there, probably virtually again. Of course, if you're in person there, you can actually go to that event in person, but either way, you should be able to see what they're coming out with, and hopefully we'll have an update in that in a couple of months. But I can't wait to see that. Hopefully it's Final Cut Pro or some equivalent on the iPad. I can't wait to see what they have there. Now, as far as the next generation iPhone SE, there's been some news about that. And the iPhone SE is said to look similar to the current design that I'm holding here, but it will have an updated processor inside with an A15 Bionic, although some reports are saying A14 CPU. So Nikkei is saying A15, but DigiTimes is claiming an A14 CPU. Either way, all of them are saying that it will have 5G, and it lines up with what Ming Chi Kuo said, where it will also be Apple's least expensive 5G phone. So maybe we'll see a millimeter wave antenna in the side and have some updated internals along with maybe an updated camera. But it doesn't look like it's going to get a major redesign, and I know a lot of people would appreciate that like Touch ID. So that makes a lot of sense. If people are really buying this, still loving Touch ID, we could see that, although they haven't said anything about that. So maybe we'll have a Face ID version. Either way, I can't wait to see what it is, but it looks like it's going to be a low-cost 5G phone, but not to be launching until 2022. So we thought it'd come out in 2021. It looks like it won't be here until 2022, according to at least 3 sources. So it looks like that's going to be the case, so we won't see it for some time unless they're wrong. Now, with the upcoming iPhone 13, and these are just dummy units or prototypes I've shown in different videos before, but this is what they're expected to look like, with the iPhone 13 mini and 13 having this diagonal camera layout, and the iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max having a much larger camera module with maybe even a larger design than this. But these are non-functional. They just give us an idea of what to expect. However, it looks like it's going to have the next Wi-Fi standard in the next iPhones. iPhone 13, according to DigiTimes, will also have Wi-Fi 6E support. So that helps with speed and interference, as it uses the 6 gigahertz band. So that could be something we'll see in the next one. It makes a lot of sense, as they regularly update them with the latest versions of Wi-Fi. Also, many recent rumors are saying we're going to see an always-on display similar to that of the Apple Watch. where it's actually got a 1 hertz display where it can ramp down the speed to 1 hertz, bring it back up to the full speed, and it saves a lot of power while having an always-on display at the same time, even in color. I would love to see that on the next iPhones. It looks like we may get that, and Mark Gurman expects this display to be coming out and be similar to the Apple Watch. So he said it may be coming. We don't know 100%, but it does seem like that's going to be a possibility. Now, also with the iPhone 13, some are saying that we'll be able to charge it a little bit faster than we are now. So instead of just the 20 watts that the current adapter can do, we could charge up to 25 watts. Now, you can still use a MacBook charger to achieve that speed, but then you maybe need a new charger anyway, so they could offer a new charger that looks similar to what we have already that offers up to 25 watts of charging. So some are saying that we should expect that with the next upcoming iPhones, where you can push more power into them and charge them more rapidly. So that makes sense. We've seen other phone manufacturers do that as long as they can manage the heat properly internally. Also, Corning, who makes glass for the iPhone, has recently come out with new glass for camera lenses or camera covers. And Apple's been using a variation of sapphire to cover these, but if Corning now has an alternative that's less expensive or almost as durable, it makes sense that we could see that in the next iPhone. They say it's newly or more scratch resistant than the current versions, and usually when they do announce something like this, we'll see them on the next iPhone. So that seems to make a lot of sense. And then finally, for the iPhone 13, it seems like production is going to be much larger than originally anticipated. According to Debbie Wu and Mark Gurman, both from Bloomberg, Apple is boosting production up to 90 million iPhones by the end of the year. However, CN Beta is saying that the supply chain sources are stating 100 million iPhones. Either way, this is at least 20% more than they made of iPhone 12 models. So whether or not that's just getting ready to sell them throughout the next year to meet demand, or just so they're manufacturing them up front and can sell them later on, is hard to say. But either way, that is a ton of iPhones, and they're currently in production now, and that's why we kind of know what they already look like. Now, with the next generation iPhone, the iPhone 14, we're starting to hear some news about that as well. According to a report by investors at JP Morgan Chase, the 2022 iPhone may have a model featuring titanium instead of just stainless steel. So currently we have aluminum or aluminium, depending on where you live, and stainless steel, depending on whether or not you have the Pro, the SE, or some other variant. But titanium could be coming in future updates. We thought this for quite some time, as Apple has used titanium for a long time. My Apple Watch is titanium. They've used titanium in MacBooks before, so it makes sense to offer a higher end version in titanium. Not only is it nice, it's lightweight, and it's non-bioreactive, and it's very durable. It can have an issue being brittle over time, so we'll have to wait and see, but I think it would be a great material to have as an offering for the iPhone. Also, to do with next generation iPhones, Apple has been granted a patent for periscope-based cameras on iPhone 14 or maybe even 15. It's called a folded camera and just has some different mirrors to help you zoom a little bit further, similar to what we saw on Samsung, but they're doing it a little bit differently. So we could see that maybe in an iPhone 14, or we may have to wait a little bit longer than that. Now, on Monday, Apple released iOS 14.7.1 to the public. This was expected, and it was expected for a couple reasons. One is security updates, and the other is unlocking your Apple Watch using your iPhone was a problem if you were using a Touch ID device. Some people with Face ID were having that problem as well, and that's been resolved in that update. But because of the security fixes in it, I would highly recommend you install it if you haven't already. So most of you probably are aware that it's already out, but I do have a video covering everything that's new in it. Also, along with that, Apple released iOS 15 Beta 4. It came out to public beta testers the other day, and it was a day after they released it to developers. And so on Tuesday, the 27th, we had public beta 4 or developer beta 4 with public beta 4 following a day after. Now, as far as that update goes, again, I have a separate video covering all of that, but many people want to know when to expect the next version. Generally, when Apple releases the first versions of the beta, as they did in June, we'll have a bi-weekly schedule. We'll have new betas every 2 weeks. And then when we get to beta 4 and beta 5, we normally switch to weekly beta updates within the month of August based off of year-over-year updates. And so I would expect it as soon as Tuesday the 3rd or maybe the 4th. Now, if we're still on a bi-weekly schedule, of course, it would be the following week on the 10th or 11th. But if we're on the weekly schedule now, finally, I would expect a new update with Beta 5 on the 3rd or the 4th as we get closer to a final release in September. So that's generally what Apple does. We can expect it in September, usually in mid to late September, around the time of the iPhone 13. Usually at Apple's event where they announce the iPhone 13, they'll talk about when to expect the update for iOS 15 to come out to the public. So we'll know exactly when at that time. When it comes to the iPad, Apple is still working on an upcoming iPad mini. And this time the iPad mini is said to look like this iPad Air and even have its Touch ID sensor. So we could have that very soon, and recent reports are saying that it will have an A15 CPU inside of it and also a smart connector like we have on the iPad Air for external keyboards. So we could have that or external accessories. So that could be coming by the end of this year. And also, it's been said that it could come with a mini LED display. However, this is also been said that it's not true. So some people are saying it could have mini LED, others are saying it probably doesn't. I'm guessing it probably does not, since the iPad Air doesn't, and mini LED right now is a Pro feature. So if we see it in the mini, I would be surprised, but I would definitely welcome it as I love the display on the iPad Pro. So maybe we'll see that in the future, though. Now, AirPods 3 apparently are kicking off production very, very soon as August, according to Nikkei Asia. They said it could launch alongside the next iPhone or iPhone 13, and again, will look very similar to what we have with the AirPods Pro, only maybe without this in-ear piece and not have as many features such as noise canceling. So we could see that very soon, maybe in a month or two from now, we'll finally get those next AirPods. So it looks like those are coming very soon since they're entering production. Now, according to Mark Gurman, he's saying that the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros will launch between September and November. Also, he's saying it was originally planned for earlier this year, but Apple had issues with the production of mini LED displays. So those are expected to be on the next generation MacBook Pros, and it makes a lot of sense that it would be delayed since there was a lot of production delays for that. Now, the MacBook Air we've been hearing about that could have a little bit more colorful look to them won't be coming until 2022, according to Ming Chi Kuo. So those colorful MacBook Airs that some people have been saying were coming later this year, it looks like either were pushed or were just never intended for later this year. So we may not see those until later. That makes a lot of sense. Apple still has time to push out all of the different M1 based or Apple Silicon based processing devices, and we've still not seen the iMac or some of the new MacBooks. So it makes sense to maybe wait for that since we already have the Air. And speaking of the upcoming iMac, according to Dylandkt, it won't be coming until 2022. Many thought it would be later this year, but a new iMac with a larger display, newer processor, would not be coming until next year, according to Dylandkt. So Apple still has quite a few things to release, but it looks like that's not one of them this year. Also, Apple is said to be working on a new external display with A13 CPUs and a neural engine built in. So instead of an Apple Pro Display XDR, this might replace it, or it could be something completely different that acts as an eGPU to help boost performance. So it looks like they're still working on that, and I can't wait to see what they have. I would love to see a new iMac and maybe new displays as well. And then finally, to do with Macs, it looks like Face ID could be coming at some point. Now, many people have said, why have they not included this yet? We have small cameras, and my MacBook Pro is very low on battery, but we have small cameras, and we could have Face ID. The iMac has plenty of room for a Face ID sensor, and we've seen similar things from Microsoft on their Surface lineup, so it makes sense to add Face ID not only to iPad and iPhone, but also Mac. So with a new iMac, new MacBooks with a mini LED display, which would need to be a little bit thicker based on usually how thick the displays are, maybe they'll have enough room for that finally. I would definitely welcome that, as it's great to have not only Touch ID, but Face ID on displays. If you ever used a Surface device, it's actually really nice to use that. Now, according to Business Insider, several people who were in charge of the Apple Watch have also moved over to work on Apple Car. So Apple's working on an Apple Car. Apparently, They're sourcing batteries throughout the US and much more. So maybe it'll be by 2028. Some people speculate we could see a car, but again, we'll have to wait and see. Apple works on a lot of products it just never releases. And then speaking of the Apple Watch, a company called Rockley Photonics is apparently the largest supplier of sensors for the Apple Watch. And they've recently revealed new biometric sensors that could allow for continuous tracking of core body temperature, body hydration, glucose, and even blood pressure. And the new sensor doesn't use green LEDs like the current Apple Watch does, but rather infrared spectrophotometers, which can measure a wider range of metrics. So we could see those in upcoming Apple Watches. We know that Apple's been working on getting blood glucose monitoring into the Apple Watch, and that would be incredible for a number of reasons. Many people would no longer have to use needles to check their blood glucose or use different devices to help monitor that. You could just have it on your wrist and know all of the time. That would be huge, along with hydration, of course, and body temp. So that would be great to see that. So I can't wait to see what they have in the future. Hopefully we'll see that. It doesn't look like it will be with the Series 7 Apple Watch. We'll just get a redesign with that, but maybe in another year or so. So that's it for this past couple of weeks news. I'm looking forward to see what those new AirPods are like, and also some new Macs. I'm really looking forward to the Pro version of whatever Apple is doing with its own silicon. But let me know what you're most interested in the comments below. Now, if you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, of course, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.